This is what makes women's basketball so fire.
I mean, I just love playing the game. It's fun.
To see how far the game has grown has been amazing.
They say nobody watching. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people in there, Martin.
Yeah, I think I've always just been able to get downhill.
When recess came, like, I had my sneakers on.
I hit them with a hezzy. After that, they quit.
Woo. What is up? What is up? What is up? What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Protect Our Queens podcast presented by Basketball Society. With me, as always, my brother in Christ, my partner in women's basketball crime, Martin Sories, my guy. How we feeling? How we feeling? How we feeling?
Good to be back, man, here on another lovely morning show. We are live here on this glorious Friday morning, another day that the Lord has made. Deacon Dwayne Marcus, I've been trying to sit on that, but after just a few more weeks, it'll be official. Big Deacon Dwayne Marcus, that just rolls off the tongue. I know it's not official yet, but man, I was trying to sit on that. I just can't. Too good. It's too good.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Put in that work, man. Put in that work.
Oh my gosh.
Deacon vibes. But yeah, man, good to be back, man. Live on a Friday morning. Anyone who's watching on the playback, good to have you. Hope you've been enjoying the Protect Our Queens podcast. You can subscribe to Basketball Society so you see when we're live. We talk women's basketball every week. We're here every week, sometimes multiple times a week, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the evening. And you would want to join live so you can talk to us while we're live and leave comments and join the conversation, which is what we want. But yeah, good to be back, man. Good to be here. And we're talking best players in the WNBA. WNBA season's about to start.
Yeah, WNBA season tips off tonight. Actually,
Tonight.
So we are mere hours away from the beginning of the WNBA season. As Martin said, please feel free to chime in throughout the course of the episode today. We're going to talk about our top 10 players. And that conversation is going to start with us reacting to ESPN's top 10 players in the WNBA. They released this list earlier, a couple weeks ago, or a couple days ago, rather. And as you can see, this is our top 10 players in the WNBA. A'ja Wilson, Napheesa Collier, Breanna Stewart, Caitlin Clark, Alyssa Thomas, Jonquel Jones, Sabrina Ionescu, Nneka Ogwumike, Jackie Young, and Kelsey Plum. Martin, we've obviously exchanged top 10s already going into this, so like we know who's each other's top 10 are on. If memory serves me correctly, neither of us have Nneka or Jackie Young in our top 10 list. Were you surprised when you saw Nneka and Jackie getting some top 10 love from ESPN?
Who was I wasn't surprised. I feel like Nneka would be honorable mention for me. I think Nneka has shown that she played top 10 basketball as a forward last year, I would say. So I'm not that surprised about Nneka, because I think even if she's not in your top 10, she's probably in your top 15. I would say the same for Jackie Young. I think Jackie Young threw me off a little bit just based on the fact that she had a down year last year. I think she'll be better this year. So based on this year, I think Jackie Young will be back into top 10 player in the league, conversations more legitimately. So I was just a little surprised by Jackie Young, given that she had a down year last year.
No, that's a good point. I agree with you. Like Nneka and Jackie, if we were to go top 15, would be my top 10. Top 15. Sorry, Jackie, I think would definitely be my top 10. I don't know if I don't want to get like I don't want to get
go there.
I don't know if Nneka's a top 15 player though at this point. Not because she's not good. I just think like I if I go down the list, like, spoiler alert, Caitlin's not in my top 10, right? But she's in my top 15. Chelsea Gray's not in my top 10, but she's in my top 15. So like Nneka's definitely in that crop. I just don't know. Like if I sit down and I flush out the next five, the first five out of my top 10, I don't know if Nneka's in that list. And I think that's just because like, Nneka, Skylar Diggins is also in that kind of crop of me where like, they're still good. And like at their best, like if we get like, they turn the clock back and, Nneka goes back to how she was playing back when she was in LA in her prime. Right. She could be there like if we're just going peak for peak, but just right now, the 10, 15 best players in the league, I don't know if Nneka is firmly in that crop for me. But to your point, she played top 10 caliber basketball last season, right? So like
it was like 17 and 10, I think. I think
right.
I think part of it is like you give her credit for just still being, like you said, she's still good. She may not be dominant like before, but she's shown that she's still very good. It's surprising. I mean, Nneka probably is. Nneka and Jackie are surprised. I mean, it's why neither of us have them in our top tens.
Right.
So that it's not surprising why it's why it kind of threw us off a little bit, because they didn't land on ours. But I think I think you could make an argument for either or both, but obviously that's not where we went with ours.
Right. Let's hit the comments super quickly. Ghost of Thank you, bro. Congratulations on becoming a deacon. I'm no longer among the flock, as it were, but thank you. I appreciate it. He also said Nneka's choice seems kind of political, not necessarily a bad thing, but they clearly want to elevate her into some sort of league-wide leadership role. She is already the president of the Players Association.
Which,
and again, I think it is already a league-wide leadership role in that capacity. But again, like what Martin was saying, I think, and this is something I do want to do before we get to ours. I think it definitely depends on what you define as a top 10 player, right? Like, what does it mean to be top 10? Because there's some people like myself who just say, I want, the 10 best players. You know what I mean? There's other people who might say, who are the 10 best players? Like, what players are going to have the 10 best seasons?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it just kind of depends on.
Yeah. Some might say 10 most impactful.
Sure.
Some might be taking it as a popularity contest, the 10 most popular. Like, you have to be specific about your criteria.
And there are some people who like do a combination of all of those things: the best, the most impactful, the most popular, projecting and all that good stuff. So it's interesting. That's what I'm saying. Like, if we're basing it off of, like you said, Martin, the fact that she did have 17 and 10 last season, that would warrant a top 10 conversation. Then it just becomes a matter of splitting hairs of like, does she actually fall into that? And
the fact that she is in a league-wide leadership role already. So I think that's also a way for people at ESPN in general to kind of give her respect as a known leader in the league, who again is still very good as a veteran, and numbers wise maybe can make the argument that she's top 10. But I think it's valid. I think that's them just like showing her respect that she deserves.
Hot take: Ezzy more impactful for the Storm than Nneka. Don't at me, bro.
I don't think that's that hot of a take.
I don't think that's a hot take. I mean,
she's younger. She's younger. She's got to be more impactful. Absolutely. No.
Yeah, I would agree there. And I think she's gonna have a great year this year too, if last year was any indication. So let's move on to our top 10s. I can start with mine. I have no problem starting with mine. So this is my top 10 players. If you guys remember to last season, this is pretty much identical to what we had when we left off. There's a little bit of movement. So I do have Asian Afisa Stewie. I think that should be the universal top 3. And in that order as well. Like, I mean, if you wanted to put Stewie ahead of Afisa, you could, but I feel like based on what we saw last season, that should be the 3 in that order, even though obviously the Liberty won the championship.
Right.
I was very high on Jonquel Jones after the end of last season, obviously winning Finals MVP. I've already thought that she was a top 10 player. I think her winning Finals MVP on a team with Stewie and Sabrina Ionescu, just being consistently great the way that she was, warrant her being 4. Alyssa Thomas is my 5, and then all of the movement comes in the back half. So if you guys remember, I did have Caitlin and Angel at the tail end of my top 10 last season because I was really, really factoring in the way that they had played last season as opposed to just who are the 10 best players in my opinion. Arike Agumbuale, Kalia Copper, Sabrina Ionescu has dropped down a bit. Kelsey Plum is a new addition to my top 10, and it's Martin's fault. And Jewel Lloyd rounds out my top 10 now. Earlier, I think last time we did this, she was like 7 or 8 somewhere. She has dropped a little bit. But Martin, I will say, Martin made a pretty strong case for Kelsey Plum being a potential MVP candidate this season. And again, like I kind of said at the end of the show last week, she's going to have a bit of a chip on her shoulder. She's going to have a little bit more of an expanded role just a bit because she is the best guard in the building now. I think she's going to have some top 10 potential. And so I would put her at number 9. So that is my new top 10 heading into the season tonight.
And I think a player that I know a lot of people were pushing back on the ESPN list, who they didn't have on their top 10, who's clearly on both of our top 10s and I think should be on anybody's, is Arike. You know,
Absolutely.
we talk about NECA, and again, Jackie Young, she is a top 10 talent. She just didn't have a top 10 season last year.
Right.
Yeah, Arike, I don't know how you don't have her on a top 10 list, right? Like that.
Yeah.
I mean, to have NECA and Jackie on there. But yeah, I mean, you know, whoever's watching, more likely than not, probably wasn't watching our October show when we last did our top 10 after the WNBA finals. So it's good to remind people what happened, but you know, we've got new viewers, we got new people who are around, so they may not remember. But and I'm glad you mentioned it, because you certainly had movement. You had Angel at 10 at the end of the WNBA season. I am curious to let you explain, because I had slight movement on mine, not too much. And when we say movement, we're talking our last top 10s, people, that we did on the show was in October. We have a couple clips from that episode. It was in October after the WNBA season had ended. So
like literally the day after, I think.
Yeah.
Literally the day after. Yeah.
My question to you, Marcus, is what has happened between October to now for you to decide that you have different? I mean, people have changed teams. So like Kelsey Plum, you mentioned, like the position that she has on the Sparks now leads you to believe she's a top 10 player. She'll have a top 10 season. But when you first started sending me your list and you're like, yeah, Angel's not. And I'm like, well, what happened? Yeah. What changed between October and now? There's no basketball being played other than Unrivaled.
Right. So a couple things. I think the big thing was, for me, my top 10 last season was a combination of, and it's usually not this way. Usually if you ask me to rank the top 10 of anything, it's just who I think are the best. Last season was a combination of who I think are the best, and also factoring in, like, there's other players who, if you remember at the beginning of the season, like Satu and Chelsea Gray were my top 10, and they were hurt for a lot of last season, so they had to fall off, right? We talked about how NECA averaged 17 and 10. Angel Reese last season averaged a double-double, set the record, set the rebounding record for rebounds per game, and she was playing like a top 10 player in the league, in my opinion, so that's why she was in there. Caitlin Clark was playing like a top 10 player last season, in my opinion, so that's why she was in there. The reason why now we're shifting and why there's been movement, and I think the big one for me that needs explanation, is Arike and Sabrina, because originally Sabrina was 6 and Arike was like 7 or 8, I think. There's a couple reasons why. I think the big reason is Arike Ogunbowale, for the first time probably in her career, and someone can correct me on this, for the first time since she's been in Dallas, she'll be able to play her true position now that they have Paige. Like, people forget, and I've had those conversations with some people on Twitter and on TikTok, people forget that Arike's a shooting guard. She's had to play on the ball a lot in Dallas because they haven't, for some reason, the Wings have not done a good job of drafting and developing and cultivating their point guard talent alongside Arike. But now that Paige is there, Arike is going to be playing off the ball a lot more, and we're going to see her play a lot more like how she was playing in Notre Dame, which is going to remind a lot of people that, one, she is one of the better scorers in the league. She's one of the most clutch players in the league, and she warrants being a fringe top 5 player right on the precipice. For Sabrina, I don't think that Sabrina is going to be worse this season, right? Because we talked about last week how I actually think she's going to have potentially another great year this year, playing alongside Natasha Cloud in the backcourt now. And of course, Marina Johannes is back as well. And so that should boost for her. But the difference is, for me, I still think Arike is a better basketball player than Sabrina Ionescu is. And so when you compare the season they both have individually, obviously last time we saw Sabrina Ionescu, she was walking off the floor as a WNBA champion. She had the game-winning shot in Game 3. That warranted her being ahead of Arike at that point in time. But going into this season, both players are going to be playing more so true to form as far as what we would expect to see them playing based on their position. I think Arike warrants being the 6th best player in the league for that reason. The other player, like Jewel Lloyd falling, is just because she's older. I think she's still good, but she's older. I don't think she'll have as good of a season as a Sabrina or an Arike or a Kalia Copper or even a Kelsey Plum, but she's still in the top 10. So it was a combination of Arike and Sabrina. Their situations have changed as far as the way that we see them play is going to be a bit different. They're going to be playing a little bit more true to position. And then for Kelsey Plum and Jewel Lloyd, it's just a matter of Kelsey Plum, you convinced me after we had the show last week, and then Jewel Lloyd, it's just a matter of she'll be the same, I think, more or less, but I don't think she'll be as impactful or have as good of a season or be as good as the 4 guards that I have ahead of her. So yeah, that's really what it boiled down to for me.
Yeah, and I think that's where we both kind of approach this, where it's like the top 10 players going into this season. based on, again, some players have changed teams, Jewel Lloyd, Kelsey Plum. You mentioned Arike and just her situation with having Paige there. She's got a different environment. So I think that's fair. And we're gonna get to Caitlin, obviously, because that is the elephant in the room of being excluded from your list. And even as you talked about Jewel Lloyd at number 10, I'm pretty sure Caitlin's gonna have a better season than Jewel Lloyd. I'm pretty sure, based on even what you just said.
Yeah, she will.
Pretty sure it's fair to say that Caitlin's gonna do more than Jewel Lloyd this year.
Caitlin will have a better season than Jewel Lloyd. We can parse a bit more as to why Caitlin's not in my top 10 when we get there. We want to hit the comments. Again, if you're just tapping with us, we are going over our top 10. So this is my top 10 list on the screen. Martin's going to do his in just a bit, but I do just want to tap him with the comments super quickly. I got a comment that says, hell yes to the JJ Love. She's one of my favorites. Absolutely. I mean, I think she's the best center in the league. Yeah. I know the WNBA GM survey came out. They voted Asia as the best center. I don't really view Asia as a center because she doesn't play center all that much. If we're talking about just true centers, that actually play center, JJ would be the best center in the league, in my opinion. Also saying, can't wait to see Paige and Arike connect like a baller super bot. Well, that's a good point. Alyssa Thomas is out in Phoenix now. A bunch of movement. Yeah, there's been a lot of movement this offseason, and a lot of that factors. And I do think, though, that this top 5 at least is identical to what my top 5 was in October in order. I think that's exactly what I had in my top 5 when we did that show. Most of the movement has come with the guards. And then last, just coming in, Jewel Lloyd has Asia. She doesn't need to do much heavy lifting. That is true. And that is why she's in my top 10. Because there's an earlier comment in here that says from the same, oh, here it is right here. Jewel Lloyd, she's fallen off a lot. Are you predicting? So it's not so much about a return for form. What I think is, what we're going to see from Jewel this season being in Vegas is much more of what we saw when she was in Seattle before Stewie left and before Sue Bird retired, right? We have to remember, yeah, she's fallen off a bit, but what do we mean by falling off? Because if you look at it from a production standpoint, she's still been hovering around 20-something points per game. She was the scoring champion in 2023, scored the most points in a single season at the time before Asia got to 1,000 last season. When we're talking about a falling off of form, to me, that's a reference more so of she's had to do more because the Storm haven't had as much talent post Stewie and Bird. And so she's been asked to do more. So she's been taking more shots. Her efficiency hasn't been at that same level. She's had more lulls in between games than we're accustomed to her seeing because she hasn't been surrounded with that high caliber of talent. So return to form to me means thinking back to what Jewel Lloyd looked like when they had Sue Bird, when they had Brianna Stewart, when they were competitive and competing for and winning championships. Yes, I think she'll get back to that because she's not the first option. She's, maybe the second option. But if Jackie Young has the season that Martin and I both think she's capable of having, Jewel Lloyd might be the third option on that team. And again, not being able to play with the best in the world and then 2 other elite guards is going to take a lot of pressure off of Jewel Lloyd. Well, I think we'll see her have probably the most efficient season we've seen from her in a very long time. So that's why she's in my top 10, is because I do think that this season she'll get back to what we've all known her to be, which was how great she was when she was in Seattle with Brianna Stewart and Sue Bird.
I will say that even as you're talking, this came to mind because we've talked about Jackie Young and her importance to this team and how she needs to get back to the form, how they really need her to be back as one of the top 2-way players in the league to get themselves back to form. By the end of the season, I mean, if Jewel Lloyd and Jackie Young are both legitimate top 10 players, that's obviously great for the Aces. They'll have 3 players in the top 10. If Chelsea Gray is going off, maybe she's solidly in that top 10. So maybe they're back to having that big 4. I do look forward to seeing how the balance between Jackie and Jewel plays out, because I think Jackie's might need to take on a little more volume. She's shown that she can do playmaking. She can do stuff in the pick and roll. So playing through her more. I mean, I've talked about my opinion with Jewel Lloyd on the Aces and that, replacing Kelsey Plum. And obviously we know she can score, but now she's in a position where she kind of has to show that she can, they're going to need her scoring. But from a guard standpoint, I think Jackie Young's going to be taking on a little more responsibility, getting back to form. And not to say that'll hurt Jewel Lloyd, but that's where she's going to have to be a little more choosy, picking her spots a little bit more, that may affect her overall numbers. Her efficiency may be great, but her production may not be as high. So that's one thing I want to look for to see, like, is Jewel Lloyd going to be a top 10 player, or is Jackie Young going to be a top 10 player? You may not be able to have both.
And that's a great point. We're going to switch gears now and toss it over to Martin's top 10 list. But before we do that, let's play this clip about Alyssa Thomas.
You know, Alyssa Thomas, who was in both of our top fives here, she's probably the only player. I know she's the only one on my top 10, probably the same for you, that's outside of the top 30 in scoring.
Yeah.
Top 30. She's like 36th or something in scoring.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of players that average more points than her. I mean, Kelsey Mitchell averaged more points than her. Angel Reese averaged more points than her. A lot of people average more points than Alyssa Thomas. But you watch her play.
And you know why she's top 5.
Yeah, the Alyssa Thomas thing is just very interesting to me because some might still have her top 3, Marcus. I mean, she is legit top 5. I just think that's a fascinating thing with Alyssa Thomas, and I think what it is like she is kind of the Draymond of the WNBA, but she's a top 5 player. You know what I mean?
And she's impactful consistently.
Yeah, the things that she does are very similar to what Draymond does. Like, she's no more of a scorer, certainly no more of a shooter, outside shooting threat than a Draymond Green. She has her reasons, right? Torn labrums in both shoulders. That's why she shoots with the right hand and she does the push shot, right? So, as I've talked about before, like the casual fan, the casual eye may watch Alyssa Thomas and be like, wait, how is she top 5? How do people have her over a Caitlin Clark or any of these other girls? She averages 10 points a game. Yeah, but when you watch Alyssa Thomas operate in a basketball game, and look, that is where some of the male versus female thing comes into play. She doesn't have to be as prolific as a scorer, as a talent, just to be a top 5 player in the WNBA. She is a dominant force, a basketball wizard, as her new coach in Phoenix put it. One of the most versatile players. Like, it goes without saying when you watch Alyssa Thomas play that she is legit top 5, and some numbers favor her more than others. Like, scoring is just one factor of it, but like, that's why I mentioned it in that clip. It's like Alyssa Thomas is top 5, and she's going to be the only one out of this group that you're not going to say is like a top level scorer or elite shot maker or some prolific offensive player. So I just think that's a fascinating thing, nuance, when it comes to Alyssa Thomas. So here's my top 10. Asia Wilson, Nafisa Collier, Stewie, Caitlin, Alyssa Thomas are my top 5. Jonquel Jones right outside the top 5 at number 6. Her teammate Sabrina at 7. Kalia Copper at 8. And then Arike, and then Kelsey Plum. This was so yeah, I know we're going to talk about the Caitlin thing. I do think, now, who did you have in yours that I don't have in mine?
You have Caitlin. I don't. I
Jewel
have
Lloyd.
You don't.
That's the Jewel Lloyd thing.
Caitlin Jewel Lloyd thing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
basically, the conversation is Caitlin Clark better than Jewel Lloyd?
Yeah, and I think she is. And I was fishing for this clip where I was trying to explain to you that Caitlin is better than Sabrina already, and that I think even though Sabrina won, and it's not even as much about that as it is just stacking up side by side. Caitlin's numbers were better, but I'm not even just talking about numbers. There are many reasons, many notes of arguments of why Caitlin is already over Sabrina just as a talent.
Sure.
And I think, it's funny. Like, I was thinking, even like this morning, I almost changed it. I'm like, is Caitlin really a top 5 player? Like, is she really in that top 5? Like, could I put Alyssa Thomas over? Like, I could comfortably put Alyssa Thomas over her just on like experience. But I know I said like a lot of this really for me goes into like, because my list is pretty similar from what my list was in October. I think my top 5 is exactly the same. I had Caitlin in my top 5 at the end of the season because she was playing top 5 basketball. To me, she was, by the end of the season, she was the best guard. She was the best guard in the league to me by the end of her rookie season. So, and you know, in terms of impact, and I think a lot of this will obviously be solidified, proven or disproven as we get into the season. But I do think she's set up to be a top 5 player. I think that's there for her.
I think by the end of the season, and you referenced Caitlin versus Sabrina, so we'll play that clip in a second and then kind of dive more into the actually we'll play it right now and then come back on the other side and talk a bit more about the Caitlin piece.
I do not think that Sabrina is the best point guard in the WNBA, and I don't think she's the best guard in the WNBA. But based on this season, I have to acknowledge that, in my opinion, obviously you think it was Caitlin, but in my opinion, I do not think we saw a better guard play basketball, despite her shortcomings in the playoffs, occasionally in the finals. I do not think we saw a better guard play basketball this season than Sabrina Ionescu.
You gave her a B. You gave her a B.
She's my highest graded guard.
No other guard played better than a B to you this season.
Well, Caitlin would get an A for me, but for different reasons.
All right. So the conversation, as Martin mentioned, if you're just now joining us, we revealed our top 10s, and the big difference between my top 10 and Martin's top 10 is that I do not have Caitlin Clark in my top 10. And not only is Caitlin Clark in Martin's top 10, she's 4th on his list. So when we start to unpack the Caitlin Clark versus Sabrina thing, right? At the end of the clip there, I gave Sabrina Ionescu a B. The reason why I gave Sabrina a B is because she had a great regular season. And then, as you and I talked about on the show over the course of the playoffs, and especially in the finals, she kind of reverted to what we saw from her in the season before when she was struggling, which is the reason why they probably lost the championship the year before. I don't think right now that Caitlin Clark is, I still don't think that Caitlin Clark is the best guard in the WNBA. I don't. Because if you ask me who the best guard in the WNBA is, we're not just talking about point guards. I think there's an argument for Caitlin to be the best point guard in the WNBA. And as we saw from the WNBA's GM survey, they're deadlocked. It's either Caitlin or it's Chelsea Gray. Me personally, I think Chelsea Gray is still the best point guard in the WNBA. Caitlin has an opportunity to stake that claim this season. But if we're talking about guards altogether, now we're talking about the Enriques and the Kelsey Plums, and we're talking about the Jackie Youngs, and we're talking about the Jewel Lloyds. And for me, yes, I do think that Caitlin Clark is uniquely situated to have an MVP caliber season. I think she's uniquely situated to have a massive jump from year 1 to year 2. And that's a really high starting point coming off of year 1, right? I think all of these things. And I think come season's end, Caitlin Clark will probably be in my top 10 at the end of the season. But the difference is something that you mentioned when you were talking about whether or not you could convince yourself to put Alyssa Thomas over Caitlin Clark. Every guard that I have in the back half of my top 10 that's ahead of Caitlin Clark has a level of experience that Caitlin just doesn't yet. And that's not her fault. Obviously, she's only been in the league for 1 season. So obviously she doesn't have as much mileage in the league as those other 5 guards do. But we've seen, I'm trying to think of who was on there, with an exception of Arike Gumbuale, obviously, those other 4 guards that are in my top 10, they have either been to or won at least 1 championship. And been to at least multiple WNBA finals, right? So we've seen them not just perform at a high level in the regular season, but they've done so in the postseason as well, right? And so for me, if you're asking me who the best players are, there's a lot of things that factors into that, but the experience point is something that when I have to split hairs and I have to sit down and say, okay, well, is this player over this person? That is something that can outweigh it, right? Caitlin Clark is very talented. And I've said that from the moment we had our massive thing after the Cheryl Swoops thing a couple Februarys ago, right? And that was a whole thing. And I've been saying that over and over and over again. I don't think that Caitlin's bad. I think she's great. She's talented. She's box office. But I just don't think she's there yet. Like, I would rather be late to the party than early and be wrong. And I'm not saying that the people who think that she's top 10 are wrong, obviously, because she's on that trajectory. But I would much rather sit back and go with the players that I know for sure are there than to kind of jump the gun a bit. So I am willing to say this. Caitlin Clark has the season that we all expect her to have this season. When we do this again at the end of the year, heck, if we do this again at the All-Star break like we did last season, you'll see Caitlin Clark's name in my top 10. That will happen.
Because
it's just not
you
there.
Had her at the end of last season.
Because at the end of last season,
it almost
she was
feels
not.
like you should show up to the party a little early this time.
You're right. I should, and I'll get a bunch of heat for it on TikTok and Instagram. It's fine. I'm big boy. I've seen monsters before, but I just look at Caitlin and I think, I think the other thing too as well that we have to acknowledge, and I do want to get your thoughts on this part specifically is, and this isn't just a women's basketball thing. It's like sports thing. You go anywhere. I feel like sometimes we crown certain players a little bit too early with certain things, right? Yeah. Where we say that they're the best guard in the WNBA, or they've got the best IQ, or they are a top 10, top 5, whatever. And again, I'm not saying that Caitlin is top 10, top 5, whatever is being done too early. But I know, this, I'm a football guy. We see all the time. We say one quarterback's top 3. The next season, he sucks. Yeah. And it's like, geez, what happened over, like you said earlier, no football was played. No games were played. And you went from being this elite to being like dog water. And so as a football guy, when I take that over to, basketball, it almost kind of like it's the same thought process. Like, okay, I'm seeing some flashes, but let me see you do it again at that exact same level or higher before I fully commit to saying, great, you're top 10. And that's where I'm at with Caitlin. We've seen the flashes. I put her at 9th on my list last season. If that continues, she's looked like she's put on some weight. Like she's obviously gotten better. She got a full off season this season compared to last year. Obviously, such a quick turnaround. First half of the season, we go on All-Star break, and she's looking better than she walked off the floor last time we saw her. She'll be in my top 10 by All-Star break if we do this again. I know she will, because she's just that good. And so maybe the football part of me is where I'm also kind of leaning on a bit when it comes to the Caitlin Clark conversation as well.
Yeah, no, and like I get it. Like I get it when it comes to, because I'm a guy too. I was one of the people not ready to crown the proverbial king in LeBron James when people were ready to call him king and crown him king and say he's the best player in the league, is the best player ever. I'm like, guys, what are we doing? Like I gotta see, like I see how great this is and how great this could be, but let's let it happen. I gotta see it, So I'm one of those people too. I think I am maybe learning from my LeBron experience that, hey, if it's there, just go with it. And I wouldn't have been one if I went back, I wouldn't jump on the train and just start calling him the GOAT. It's because I still don't think he's the GOAT. But so it was more about like who the best player was at the time. Because I'm like, guys, we still have Kobe. We still have guys that are more proven, more experienced, have done more, have been to the finals, all the stuff you're saying. Like we've got guys that are more qualified to say they're the best right now. Maybe in 5 years it'll be LeBron. But I think where I am right now is that I think there's enough, and you spoke to some of it. I think there's enough evidence to have confidence in what Caitlin Clark is about to do. I don't have any numbers or projections of how much she'll average or what she'll do, but you said if she's better than what she was last year, if she's just the same, even if she's a little bit worse, even if there's a little drop off, she should still be considered top 10. She could still be considered better than Sabrina Ionescu, who is one of the top 2 or 3 point guards, whatever. I mean, Sabrina's probably higher on the point guards list than like overall guards list, if you want to do it that way. But yeah, I think it's crazy because, and I when I was going through our past episodes pulling clips, I saw that I said this. Anytime you're doing rankings or picking players or talking about who's better, there's always a preference thing. So criteria is always so important with this stuff. For me, I could, if I were picking players, if I picked a player for my team that I wanted to have on my team, I would pick a Kalia Copper over a Caitlin Clark based on my personal preference for like what I would want for my team, right? Based on like personal preference, subjectivity is a real thing, right? But if I'm doing this list of who's better right now, it does kind of hurt me to say that Caitlin Clark is just better than Kalia Copper, because the reasons why I would take Kalia Copper on my team over Caitlin Clark, there are things about Kalia that I would want more that are better than Caitlin, that I would consider better, and that's why I would want her better for what I want for my basketball team. But if it's not based on that, if it's just based on looking at how you're performing, how you're playing with your team at the time, what Caitlin does with the basketball in her hands from a scoring and assisting and gravity standpoint outweigh, I think, what Kalia Copper does, even though she does things better than Caitlin and more dynamic than Caitlin, mainly athleticism and defense. Those are the main, I mean, that's the main difference between the two. But overall impact wise, listen, I talk about Caitlin versus Sabrina thing. Like, Caitlin moves at it differently. I've told you this. She moves differently than Sabrina. And I know moving isn't a stat. It's not a quantified feature. But when I watch basketball, how you move plays a big part in how I determine who you are as a basketball player and how effective and impactful you are. Caitlin's movement is one of the most underrated features of her game because she's not fast. She's not quick. She's not athletic. But when she gets that ball in her hands, it's a lot like Jason Kidd. She's faster with the ball than without the ball. That's just one small piece of like how she changes the dynamic of a basketball game just by being out there with the ball in her hands. The way she passes, her gravity and her shooting, obviously we know about, but her push of pace is what makes her so special. It's what makes her like a Steve Nash, Jason Kidd type. And while I love a Kalia Copper, I'm biased towards shooting guard. So that's if I'm saying who's a top five, I've got to say Caitlin. And there's no what she could do to build on that this year. I think it's all there. Her team's better. She's got a better coach. She's got more confidence. She did put on she's looking stronger already. I think it's there already. I said at the end of last season, I'm pretty sure she's better than Sabrina already. And it sucks to say this, but it's just my truth. I think Sabrina is now in the hunt of like showing and proving to people, it's obviously not a one-on-one game. It's not this personal, of course, not trying to make it about this, but there is still room for Sabrina to prove to people that she's better than Caitlin Clark. It's not definitive anymore.
Sure, that's fair. Let's hit the comments real quick. Lisa says, "Good morning, black men." Good morning, Lisa. Thanks for tapping in with us this morning.
Good morning, black
Tulip says, "Kaz a 2A player, better scorer, more efficient, leader, champion, impactful." All of those things. There's a comment in here. Here it is.
All that. Now,
intangibles matter.
Let's say though, quick though, because this is the Kalia. Like, if Kalia Copper were leading the Indiana Fever, do you think are they a championship team? Are they that much better? Are they what?
I would. Here's the thing.
I'll tell you. Before you go, let me say this. I'll say it. If Caitlin was the point guard for the Phoenix Mercury with Satu Sabali and Alyssa Thomas,
it'd still be top heavy.
But the way Caitlin plays,
so that's
turn that team into probably a better. I hate to say it because I love Kyle, and they're going to be really good. But the way Caitlin plays turns that team into a different kind of team than what they probably will look like this year. Still top heavy, but Caitlin versus Kalia Copper, impact on the game. I know what Kalia does on both ends. She does a lot. You're talking about a player that gets people involved, that naturally she set the assist record as a rookie. You're talking about a different level of basketball impact when you can generate that much offense based on how you play.
Yeah, so that's what I feel like because Caitlin has more control over what the offense will look like on any given point in time, you would have to say if you took Ka and put her in Indiana, probably not, because they would then be lacking they wouldn't have a true point guard.
Right.
Now, if you were to take Caitlin and put Caitlin in Phoenix and then move Alyssa Thomas to Indiana, that I think would be
still would be clunky.
It still would be clunky, but that feels more apples to apples to me because Alyssa Thomas brings the ball to the floor. She's not a point guard, but she's point forward. She brings the ball to the floor. She kind of plays that point guard role and all that good stuff. But No, if Kyle Copper was in Indiana, I wouldn't feel any more confident about Indiana's chances of winning a championship than I do about them now. Just because the question then will become, well, who's the point guard going to be?
Yeah.
Because we love Kelsey Mitchell, but
what about Sabrina though? Like, let's not even make it about it.
If I put Sabrina in Indiana, I would still say no, because the players in Indiana that they've acquired this offseason were specifically acquired to play off of a player like Caitlin, who has the gravity and who moves the way that she moves when she doesn't have, even when she has the ball in her hand, when she doesn't have the ball in her hands. Sabrina doesn't move much or nearly as quick as Caitlin does when she doesn't have the ball in her hands. And so I think they'd win a bunch of games. I think they'd be competitive. But again, that would determine on what are we defining as the ceiling for the Indiana Fever with Caitlin. Is their ceiling winning a championship this season? Because if so, I would say that maybe instead of saying that the Fever can win a championship, maybe they just get knocked down and say their ceiling is getting to the finals, and if the matchup is right, they can win the chip. Like, so it's a marginal.
It might be the same ceiling now, and I hate to go all hypothetical around the horn like this, but
I like this.
Let's think Kate now put Caitlin on the Liberty instead of Sabrina.
You put Caitlin on the Liberty, they're definitely winning a championship.
Thank you.
No, that's for sure. And that's because again,
I mean, they won with Sabrina, and not to say it's automatic and Caitlin, and then we're debating if she's really better, but like I think also with the way that, I mean, you got to think about it too. Like the Liberty won a championship last season, without Marina Johannes. Now that she's back, like they're going to be playing a lot more free flowing. Caitlin, I think, would be the perfect backcourt mate to play in that with. We've seen the Johannes in the preseason put up a one-legged three like it was nothing. Like that's and they run a lot more. So I do think they probably win a championship if Caitlin was in New York. I wanted to go back to this comment though that Tula put in here. Intangibles matter, advanced stats matter. Come on, panel. Box scores mean nothing. We're in 2025 now. I just want to. So I don't think box scores don't matter. I think box scores matter in context. And I've said this point on the show before when we're talking about, because the big thing with Caitlin when it comes to like, is she the best point guard or not, is people will pull up her assist numbers and all this other stuff. And like, that's great. But as I've said on the show before, in 2023, Jalen Brunson averaged more points per game than Kevin Durant does. No one in their right mind would sit here with a straight face, though, and tell you on a camera or otherwise that Jalen Brunson is a better scorer than Kevin Durant. That would never happen. And so I don't think that box scores don't matter. I do think box scores matter in context, right? And so when we're comparing Caitlin to certain players, we also have to remember Caitlin in year 2 has a lot more responsibility as a point guard than some of these other point guards that we might want to compare her to. Like, I got into a back and forth about Caitlin over Arike because I said that Arike is better than Caitlin Clark. And the response to me was, Caitlin averages more assists and Caitlin does all these other things. I'm like, well, yeah, Arike is not a point guard. Arike is a shooting guard. She just has had to play the point because of a lack of viable point guard talent in the backcourt alongside her. But if you put Arike in her natural position, as we'll see her this season, as a shooting guard, and Caitlin's in her natural position as a true, you even said she might be even more of a true point guard this season. That was one of your takes last week. And we're just comparing the two at their best. Arike at her best as the best shooting guard in the league, Caitlin at her best as probably the best point guard in the league. I personally would still take Arike over her in that context. So I don't think that box scores don't matter at all. I do think, though, that if you're basing all of your basketball opinion and all of any sports opinion simply on numbers in a chart, I think that's dangerous because, as we talked about earlier, Alyssa Thomas was like 40th last season in scoring. But if you watch Alyssa Thomas play basketball, you understand why people say that she's a top 5, top 3 player in the league. So it's not all based on box score, but box score with context matters. So, like, yes, Caitlin averages more points than a lot of these guards. She's also the number 1 option. Like, if you put Caitlin Clark in Vegas, and this is really dangerous, so I don't really like that I'm doing this, but I'm going to do it. If you put Caitlin Clark in Vegas, Asia Wilson's still the number 1 option on that team. Caitlin would not be the number 1 option in Vegas the way that she is in Indiana. So, like, that's a difference to me. You put Caitlin in a couple other situations as well, it's the same conversation. So I think all of that stuff matters when you're bringing in box score and intangibles and all that good stuff. Yeah, it does. I mean, But the player still matters in that context,
Right?
Because Ryan Howard is the number one option. Doesn't mean that she's a top 10 player. Doesn't mean that she's just because you're the number one option doesn't mean you're the number one player. Doesn't mean you're a top 5 player. I mean, I know what you mean in terms of opportunities, but you only get opportunities as the number one option if you're really like that.
Yeah.
If you're really like that, who's the number one option on the Houston Rockets? Who cares? You know, it all depends. It still depends on who the player is.
Yeah. It was probably
still depends on who the player is.
It does. But I
because like Caitlin Clark going to Vegas with Asia Wilson. Like I had told you coming into this, you had told me when Caitlin coming into her rookie year that Aaliyah Boston would be the number one option. I had to stop you. Like, no.
Well,
it's a 1A, 1B. Caitlin will be the one option right away. She's the point guard. She's Caitlin Clark. Like, if she goes to Vegas, if she were to go to Vegas, it's a 1A, 1B, bro. If she went to Vegas right now, it's a 1A, 1B. You don't get a Caitlin Clark. Like we talk about with Mylasia Fulwiley. You don't bring in a player like that. Vegas wouldn't bring in Caitlin Clark to just be throwing the ball inside to Asia Wilson all day. No.
This is the program.
You got to know your KYP. Know your personnel.
No, you're probably right. You know what? I said that about Aaliyah Boston last season because South Carolina had just beaten Iowa in the national championship. I was feeling good about myself there.
Yeah, you got to get away from these personal, emotional takes, sir. As a South Carolina, Aces fan, I know you're loud and proud, but you got to move off that. That's what got you in trouble putting Angel Reese in your top 10, and now she's nowhere to be found.
Well, let's be respectful of it, bro. They're gonna come. They're gonna come get you. They're gonna come get you in the comments. And I hope you're ready. Who are they? Let me see. Let me go find it because they put it in the comment. Let me see. Where is it at? The Aces Sky Coalition is gonna come for you. You better watch your six. Look, let's talk about Angel Reese for just a second before we go. Okay, I will admit. I put Angel Reese in my top 10 last season because I thought she was playing like a top 10 player and because I just didn't appreciate the disrespect that Angel Reese was getting on the internet. And I just felt like I needed to kind of just show some love to the Chi-Town Barbie. But I will say this about Angel Reese though. And I'm not going to bring up the post fades because I brought it up too much already. But I will that with the way that she's looked like she's been playing a bit in the preseason under Tyler Marsh, I think that Angel Reese has I think she has top 10 player potential this season. She looks, her game has opened up a bit more. Like you said, she's bringing the ball up the floor. And that spin move, the second one in that game that went crazy was off of her bringing the ball up the floor and just choosing to just attack the rim. Like, I think I think everyone who says that Angel Reese is just good at rebounding is going to be in for a rude awakening because this is going to be a lot of stuff's going to be opened up. She's going to be taking a lot more shots outside of the paint. I think she'll be hitting a lot more of those shots this season compared to last season. And she's worked on her footwork. The underhand scoop layups are gone thanks to Lisa Leslie. I do think Angel Reese can kind of have another good season where she can be where we say who are the 10 best players this year. She can once again be in that conversation. I think she's that good, but she's nowhere to be found though because she's 12th on my list instead of 10.
And she's right outside the top 10. I think she could probably make an argument for top 15, and I agree with you. I think she could play top 10 basketball this season. I think lastly, like the crazy thing about this whole thing is that like there really is so much talent to appreciate, and that's what we talk about so much here and like try to remind people of, even in the context of like Caitlin Clark, where people think that she is just like the best women's basketball player they've ever seen and by far the best player in the league right now. And it's like, if you've taken time to like look around and see the Kelsey Plums and the Enriques and the Kalia Coppers and all this talent, even like, cause like, bro, there are people who like, if anyone has like an Alyssa Thomas listen, there are still people who are probably like, Breanna Stewart, like, why is she over Caitlin? You know, like there are still people who
you're right.
Caitlin is by far like she's number one, like, you know, and it's like the reason of the people who are watching who know understand that like the pecking order is clear. Like Asia, Fee, Alyssa, Jonquel, some, you know, some mixture of that. Breanna Stewart, obviously, like that's the top three. Like the top 3 to 4 are known. You know, I have Caitlin at 4. You know, like I said, I could have easily put Alyssa Thomas over her at 4, put Caitlin at 5, but I think she's going to be that much more impactful. But it's a nuanced thing. And again, a lot of it is subjective. Like I could make an argument for Enrique over Caitlin. I can make the art. I think it's Caitlin over Arike, right? I think Caitlin's done enough to be over Arike right now. I know it's only 1 year, but I'm taking the 1 year and also projecting what she'll be in year 2. I think impact wise and play style wise, I think she is a top 5 player. But I could still make the argument for, like I said, my personal preference. If I were building a team, like my first player, I'd probably go with a Caitlin over Kalia Copper. But if you're asking me who I'd rather have, it's probably Kalia Copper, just based on my preferences with what I like with basketball. So it's a very nuanced thing because there's so much talent to pick from. If you put them side by side, a lot of them is it can be a coin flip. It's kind of up in the air. It's not like that definitive to me because the talent is that good.
And just last thing I'll say on when it comes to building a team, and Martin and I have built plenty of teams since Protect Our Queens has started, and even a little bit before then, it certainly depends on what you prefer. Yeah. Like there's a lot of people out here who would probably say, like, if all players are available, they'd take Caitlin. Yeah, probably. But there are some people who would take Asia before Caitlin. There are some people who might want to take Angel before. It just depends on what it is you're trying. As if you build a team around that first player in mind, it doesn't actually matter who that first player off the board is, as long as you build the right team around that player. And even that is a conversation as well, where people will start to conflate, if all players are available versus who the best players are. Like, if all players are available, a lot of people would take Caitlin Clark, sure. But that doesn't mean she's the best player. That's because she's in year 2.
That's right.
She has the least amount of run on the tires. She's got a lot of mileage in her. We saw last season, as good as it was, is the worst she'll be in the league. So it can only go up from there. There's a lot of reasons you take a young player first because of projection.
Yeah.
Likewise, you could take an established player like Asia Wilson first because you know what you're getting from her.
Right.
You're getting 20 and 10 with a block and a steal combined, a night. You're getting that with really good efficiency and maybe even a 3-point threat. That's why you take her first, right?
And has won
champion
winner already.
Right. Yeah. And it's already a proven. So there's a lot of reasons now, I will say this. There's a small conglomerate of players that should be considered for that first. I'm not sitting here saying we're going to take Ryan Howard first off the board. No disrespect to Ryan. I love her. But she's not in that group of people.
Yeah.
But there's a group of people that you would consider, if I want to take first first overall to build a team, it's not just Caitlin. You could get Angel. Some people might say Angel, Asia Wilson. Some people might say Brianna Stewart. Some people, it just depends on but as long as the team is built around them the way it needs to be built, it doesn't matter who that first player is, as long as that's the case. And so I just want to say that part as well, because you'll get a lot of people that say, when you say top 10 players, who's the first person off the board if all players are available? There's a lot more that goes into drafting players than just who's the best. Like, there's a lot more than that. Age matters, experience matters, all that good stuff. So I'm off my soapbox.
When it comes to this top 10, it's all about that. Who's the best?
That's
all it's about. When we do this, it's all about who we think is the best.
Absolutely. I'm going to get on my soapbox now because the Deacon jokes are still running in the comments. So we're gone. Thank you guys for watching us this morning on yet another episode of Protect Our Queens podcast. If you are not already, please subscribe to Basketball Society on YouTube so you don't miss any future episodes of the podcast. If you missed a segment of the show, you can also check out segments of the show posted, uploaded on the channel as well. When you're finished liking and subscribing on Basketball Society, head over to Instagram, follow us at @ProtectOurQueens_. Appreciate you so much for that, my brother. Also follow us on Twitter at @POQueens_. The season, like we said, tips off tonight. And so we are super duper excited for the season. We're going to be talking all things WNBA from tonight all the way until we crown a champion in 2025. So if you're not tapped in with us, and if you like women's basketball, I don't know what to tell you. If you don't like women's basketball, this is not the place for you. If you do like women's basketball, this is exactly where you need to be. So for my guy, Martin Sories of Basketball Society, this is Marcus of the Protect Our Queens podcast signing off. Thank you guys for watching. And as always, you guys enjoy yourselves some women's basketball.